All right, I think we're leveling off a bit. I do want to be conscientious of everyone's time, but just want to thank everyone for joining us today for what should be a great webinar on the State Opportunity Index Survey, which is funded and led by the Strada Education Foundation. Before we get into logistics on how to participate in the free spring 2025 implementation and the findings from the previous State Opportunity Index, we'll get started with some brief introductions. My name is Allison Cornett, and I serve as the Director of Research here at Trellis Strategies. I oversee all of our survey and qualitative products here at Trellis, and I'm joined today by some excellent colleagues from Trellis and Strada. And to start things off, I'll hand it off to Abby and then to our colleagues at Strada Education Foundation. Abby?
I'm Abby Willems, and I am a research strategist at Trellis Strategies. I lead a lot of our recruitment and onboarding for our surveys. So if you choose to participate in the survey, you will be working with me. So really excited to have you all here this afternoon.
I'll jump in and say hello. Dave Clayton, Senior Vice President Research with Strada Education Foundation, and just delighted by your interest, and hopefully we can be of service to you and have an opportunity today to talk about this survey work focusing on student experiences and how that all connects to what we hope for each of those students. Great opportunities in their lives as they go forward. So, Nicole?
Nicole Torpey-Sabo, Vice President of Research at Strada, and helping to lead the State Opportunity Index project, and just really grateful for everyone's presence with us today. So I'll go ahead and reshare our slides. And okay, so State Opportunity Index project. This is really meant to be a tool and a support for institutions and states. And the context of this project is that we are looking to help institutions and states to help their students realize the full value of a college degree. So we know it's incredibly important to understand where we are as a nation and as states on college access and on college completion. And increasingly, we're also recognizing the importance of that final link from college completion to economic opportunity. And that's still the case, that postsecondary education is the strongest pathway to economic opportunity, but that it's not realized by everyone. And so how do we strengthen that link? And that is where this project is aiming to be a useful resource, is how do we get from college completion to economic opportunity? What are the strategies that institutions and states can take to ensure that their students are experiencing all those benefits of education? So about the project, there are 5 areas of focus that we highlight that research has shown can help strengthen that connection between education and opportunity. The first one is affordability. This makes sense. If cost is a barrier, then students are never even going to get onto that first step of college access. But these other ones are a little newer and a little more innovative compared to things that have been measured before. So next one is employer alignment. Really, how are the kinds of degrees and skills that students are learning and getting credentialed with aligned with the talent development needs of their local area? Quality coaching is about the kind of guidance that students are getting. Work-based learning, are they getting the experience in the workforce before they graduate? And then clear outcomes has to do with the data infrastructure that's available. So do we actually understand what's happening to graduates that go on, or students that take certain educational pathways? So the State Opportunity Index, it highlights all of these 5 areas at the state level, but the survey is really focused on 2 of them. So I can quickly just give a little overview of the other areas, but then we're going to really be focusing in on that quality coaching and work-based learning. So affordability, there are existing data sources, right? There's IPEDS data, there's census data on, kind of local economic conditions, and IPEDS data on net price. Similarly, with employer alignment, we can look at completions, we can look at job postings and kind of see how well those are matching up. And then for state data infrastructure, we work directly with state data teams in each state to understand their current status for what kind of data they make available and how those insights are used. For these two metrics on quality coaching and work-based learning, there really are not existing sources of data to understand where we are as a country, as states, or as institutions on serving our students. And so that is where our team has created a nationally representative survey to understand the experiences of students. And so that's where we were in our pilot report. And we're going to share with you in the next couple slides where we've started with that pilot report. But then this year, the exciting innovation is that it's not just that nationally representative level, but the ambition is to let every state and institution know where they are and how well they're serving their students on guidance and work-based learning. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Dave, to kind of give us an overview of that survey effort as it began and what we learned.
Hello. Welcome. Many of you, Nicole and I, have worked with over the years in different settings and projects. And so it's wonderful to be with you, and others may be newly acquainted with Strada and our student survey work. If I were you, I might be sitting there wondering, who are these people? Why do they think they have any, expertise or anything to offer in surveying our students? And maybe most importantly, what is the benefit to us as an institution in your role of helping deliver on that promise of education, and what else is going to happen with this data? So we're trying to answer that today. That's our goal. But just to know, for you to know, Nicole and I've worked together for almost 7 years now, and in those 7 years, we have surveyed and analyzed the data from over 500,000 students and alumni and members of the public, and their perceptions about prospective students, current students, recent graduates, stopped out, returning workers, the whole spectrum of experiences about perceptions of post-secondary education and training, community college, 4-year, graduate school, not quite as much graduate work, and returning workers. And so all of that we've done. And in that work, we've been fortunate to develop some custom surveys and standardize them and work with great partners. We're so fortunate to work with Trellis and their team and all that they have done in the field with student financial wellness and in many custom projects and relationships as well. So we're in good hands here. But we've developed an alumni outcome survey and partnered with many of you and supported some learning cohorts in that. We've done work throughout the pandemic. You may have been familiar with our Public Viewpoint series, where we were actually surveying the public every week, writing new questions, and had webinars every 2 weeks and once a month as things tapered a little bit. So we are so fully committed to understanding the experiences of individuals, particularly where there are gaps in our administrative data, so that we can understand that student voice and student perspective as a means to point to solutions. What are the strengths, right? Not everything's just how much you get paid as an outcome, right? Those lifetime earnings. So what are the multiple benefits of post-secondary education and training? And then what are the things that help people fulfill their aspirations and dreams and goals when they decide to pursue that education? And so this all fits inside of that context. And our goal is really your participation is particularly valuable as we think about the State Opportunity Index report is really focused to state policymakers to get them to support and invest in things that will advance the effectiveness and the productivity and the value of public education, post-secondary education in their states. Beneath that is a layer of detail to help you understand your institution and point to the solutions that you'd like to prioritize and how can you have support and understanding of how to best serve your students. So that's just a little big picture of where we are, and we'll have time for discussion and question and after with you as we go along today or offline, but wanted to provide that perspective. So now back State Opportunity Index, this specific survey focusing on quality coaching, education to career guidance, and work-based learning experiences. This is the second year that we'll be fielding this survey. In the pilot year, we've did a dual sample. We worked with our colleagues at College Pulse, and we had a sample of recent graduates, right? As you can see, classes of 2020 through 2023, and you can see those sample sizes there strongly with the 4-year. We're looking to build out the 2-year students this year, and we'll certainly do more. And then we also had the same information for about 12,000 undergraduate students. And so we were able to look at the relative, performance and responses of the recent graduates and the current students. This year, we're pivoting the entire survey work to current students. So what you'll see today are the recent graduate results from last year's published report. And that's particularly important because they could also report on their outcomes after college. But going forward, we'll be focusing consistently, regularly, year over year on the experiences of current students. So with that, let's maybe look at the next slide. Quality coaching or education to career guidance. We have within our strategic plan a vision to support the field in helping ensure that each student has access to the information, the support, the guidance to help them achieve their aspirations and to understand education to career pathways that will fulfill those aspirations for them. So what did that look like in a survey setting? How do we operationalize it? We asked recent graduates and students both 3 questions, right? One is, did you receive, during your most recent degree, did you receive personalized coaching or guidance to select the experiences that would prepare you to be successful? And this was a yes answer, right? Yes or no. The survey itself, Nicole may want to comment, actually asks about the sources. Who did you receive that from? Which sources were most valuable? So you would get that content for your institution from your students, an understanding of when they received it and where. This timely information. This is largely comes out of, we have in this work wonderful groups of advisors. This is a lot of this timely information comes from Tim Rennick's work at the National Institute for Student Success out of Georgia State, and the empirical kind of foundation he has there of, did you receive information about career paths, about job opportunities, about potential earnings, and even the career outcomes and earnings of students who attended the institution and were part of the program that you are enrolled in and participating in, and the timeliness of that. Did you get it, before you matriculated, before the end of your first year, during the course of your education? You'll get that detailed information about timing, but these are the criteria we have. And then the importance of individuals having support in, developing the goal, the plan and the goals, and overcoming barriers and challenges as they arise. So that was our indicator when you put those 3 things together. If you could say yes to all of those 3 things, then you were counted as, yes, I had a positive education and career coaching and guidance experience. Nicole, maybe the next slide just kind of sees anything you'd add here before we jump in?
Maybe on the next one, yeah.
Okay. Well, when we looked at the recent graduates and we controlled for other factors and considerations and typical demographics, you'd see that the individuals who reported that they did have the quality education to career guidance were also more likely, 69%, to report that they had a first job that required their degree, relative to 52% of the individuals who didn't have those coaching and guidance experiences. Satisfaction with your first job, again, higher significantly for those who had the coaching and guidance. Satisfaction with long-term career goals and progress, again, significantly higher for those who had the coaching experiences. Nicole, did you want to add anything?
Yeah. Just that there is a report in which we kind of go deeper into some differences that we found. Some of the most interesting ones, I think, were by field of study. And so we noticed, for instance, that a lot of the students that were in fields of study that are less obviously connected to a career, so, maybe liberal arts or social sciences, seemed to feel like they were really lacking this kind of guidance and direction, as opposed to maybe the engineering students or the nursing students felt more solid. And so just kind of the importance of recognizing the distinctions even within certainly within a state, but within an institution of who is likely to be receiving this kind of support and who isn't.
And those students who are least likely by discipline or field of study to have received, to say they received that coaching guidance, Nicole, they were actually the most likely, they had disproportionate benefit by their own self-report, right? It was more valuable and instrumental for them. Jake Brody, good question. Like, how did this decision to pivot from recent grads to current students? Twofold. One, very pragmatic, finding alumni to be representative at a state level is harder than finding current students. You have your arms around your current students, and it's a pathway to engage them. Two, and more importantly and more strategically, we wanted institutions to feel empowered to be understanding their student experiences, and for state policymakers and regulators and those who are funding public education to have a sense that if we can contribute funding to our institutions and resources, policy and practice improvements, that we have more ownership of the students while they're students. So we thought centering it in the student experience while they are still students. And it's also more broad. It includes those who are not graduates necessarily. And so understanding, and each of you, there's opportunity for students to opt in and give consent to append their survey responses to your administrative data that you have on campus. In our past surveys, that has been about 60 to 70% of students of alumni, I guess, have agreed to have their survey data appended. So that's another kind of benefit to you, we believe. Anyway.
One thing there is that, so as Dave said, serving current students gives you a little bit more of a real-time indicator of how you're doing versus an alumni. For alumni, we had to kind of cast a wider net in order to get a large enough sample size. So it was including people who had graduated within several years of a time frame. So it's a little bit more of an immediate read on, how any kind of institutional changes might be impacting students. But then we also recognize the importance of understanding how it plays out for these kind of longer term outcomes, like the kinds of jobs and careers graduates are getting and their satisfaction with that. So our intention is for those who are interested to also have an opt-in to a longitudinal panel. So that way we could do a follow-up survey in a few years to kind of track those outcomes and understand more the links between these really promising practices and then the career trajectories of students.
Okay. You got us warmed up. You guys can go deep on research and we'll go as deep as you like, but I'll pick up the pace here and kind of get to our group Q&A. Thank you. These are the results that were published last April 2024 from that survey work. 24% from that national sample of 800 plus two-year student alumni indicated that they had received the quality coaching experience. 20%, 1 in 5 of those recent graduates from the public four-year institutions indicated that they had the quality coaching experience. That's self-report. They may not have recognized what they got or recalled it. We'd like them to recognize what they're getting, the value, and appreciating it. Our desire is that we can all do much better by those students, and how do we deliver that? We had enough sample in the alumni to just look at the four largest states by population. And so we saw not a lot of variation, Florida versus California, New York is kind of right at the margins, but is it a meaningful difference? Not really, right? If you were at an institution, you'd want to see growth and progress go from 20% to 40%, right? This is something you'd aspire to. Let's go maybe to the next section and then over to you, Nicole, on the others. But work-based learning was this other dimension. Last year, we reported on one set of indicators. This is based on work that Nicole has published, and certainly others in the field have identified, a premium associated with having a paid internship. Those who graduate and have a paid internship are more likely to be employed. They're more likely to, they earn more in that first job, et cetera. So at a very top line face valid level, we just asked, did you have an internship and was it paid? And reported on the number of individuals who had had those experiences. The survey this year, maybe Nicole, give them a little bit of sense of what you would get, what you would get at your institutional reports and what will be covered in the survey.
Yes. So sort of still to be determined on what will be publicly reported in State Opportunity Index, but within the work-based learning section of the survey, there are many more types of work-based learning that we ask about. So apprenticeships, project-based learning, service learning, federal work study, on-campus employment, off-campus employment, micro internships. We're really interested in that whole spectrum and whether students are receiving pay, whether they're receiving credit, some of those other key characteristics. And we continue to do research. We have a handful of different research projects right now trying to understand the evidence and the efficacy behind all those other types of work-based learning, since we've consistently seen that paid internships are beneficial but not reaching enough students. So we're still trying to understand, what might be some other practices that institutions could adopt.
Thanks, Nicole. So again, in the 2024 report, as we reported, you'll see that this similarly now here the hierarchy on the far right is a paid internship. That midpoint on the graph line is an unpaid internship, and then no internship in terms of student responses or recent alumni responses on did their job require a degree, was their satisfaction with the job and satisfaction with their career progress. So again, by self-report, cross-sectional, strong indications that those who have paid internships and those who have internships report more satisfaction with their career and employment outcomes. Yeah. And at a national level, you see that on the top right corner, that 26% is the percentage of the recent graduates who said they held a paid internship. 10% of the two-year graduates in that national sample held a paid internship as a part of that. And then again, states consistently, around a quarter, a little bit lower, but again, within the margins. This year's report, you're all a part of this because our goal is to have representative samples for each of the 50 states. So you can think about that ability to see for the public institutions in each of the 50 states. And we'll get into some of the details of that, but think of the power of that for your desires to have support for advancing quality work-based learning for your students. Nicole, back to you.
Let's get to why we're all here, which is your opportunity to partner with us on the 2025 State Opportunity Index Survey. So, as we've been kind of speaking to, this year is an expansion compared to what we did in 2024. So in 2024, we had a national panel and we were able to report nationally and then in those 4 largest states. This year, we will continue to have that national student panel, but we're also adding the opportunity for institutions to participate in order to try to be able to report results in up to 50 states. And one really important thing that we want to note is we will not publicly report any institutional data. So the only thing that will be publicly reported will be state level, and any institutions that participate will also be combined with that panel. So, and we won't disclose institutions who participated unless you give us your permission or you want to be identified. But we will not. There will be no institution A. Had 30% of their students had an internship. Because really, our goal for this, there's 2 things. One is to motivate action and support among state policymakers for these kinds of practices for students. And then the other one is really to give institutions a window into how their students are doing and, give you the ability to maybe set a baseline. And then if this is a goal that you have about reaching more students with guidance or with work-based learning, that this can give you a spotlight into where you are and help you learn, what kind of progress is being made. So the other thing we noted, there are more questions on work-based learning. There's a lot of demographic information in the survey. So when you have your own data back. There's a lot of ability, and this will be in the reports as well, but to break it down by different demographic groups of student population and, academic characteristics and that kind of thing. The maps on the right here are just where we are, and this even was where we were as of 2 days ago, so may have progressed a little bit. But in terms of states where, as of now, we expect to have at least 1,000 responses are the ones in green. 2-year institutions are on the top. We're a little bit leaner on 2-year institutions, and 4-year institutions are that bottom map. So green, we expect to have at least 1,000. Yellow right now between 500 and 1,000 responses, and then red right now fewer than 500. But we are still very actively recruiting, and we really hope to fill all these out. So we would love, no matter what state you are from right now, we would love to have you join and participate in this effort. And there should be some good benchmarking opportunities as well. I'm gonna have just one slide about how to get involved, but really going to turn it over to the pros at Trellis to get into more detail about this. But at a high level, the benefits to being involved in this is you'll receive a report on the education to career guidance and work-based learning experiences of your students. As I was saying, hopefully that gives you insights in order to do any kind of program improvement or just kind of understand where your students are. It's confidential, it's free. And then Trellis handles all of the IRB process and all those kinds of administrative needs of institutions. It's already been approved by an external IRB, the same IRB that does the human subjects training. So we can share that paperwork, but also help support you in any kind of additional paperwork your institution might need. There will be benchmarks. So in your customized report, you will have access to not just how your institution is doing, but an aggregate benchmark. And, we can talk about geography or institution type. We won't be able to say, okay, you choose the institutions by name because we're keeping institutional participation confidential, but by institution type, we'll be able to provide those benchmarks. And you'll also get a de-identified data file of that student level data to do additional exploration. So, and please stop me, by the way, any of the other panelists. I can't see the chat, so if there's something that we should pause to address, just let me know. But otherwise, I'll turn it to Abby, who can get us more into the process.
Thanks, Nicole. Looking at the timeline, we are currently in active recruitment for the survey. We have actually launched the survey with a few institutions, and that's going really well. So we're excited about that. So one thing that is different about this survey than if you have participated in something like the Student Financial Wellness Survey with us in the past is this is a rolling administration. So we have some flexibility on the timeline, which is really nice. We're able to work with your calendar and figure out what works best for both your survey calendar and your students as well. So we're currently in that sign up period, and we'll go in the next slide into a little more what that entails. Sorry.
I thought you wanted me to advance. I can go back.
Oh, no, sorry. And then the survey is actually open until the end of April. And then in June, institutions will receive their de-identified data file. And then in October, they receive those reports. So now you can go to the next slide, Nicole. So for that process to participate, the first step is to complete and submit a letter of intent. And we do have a template for that. We're happy for you to use our template or for you to have your own letter, whatever works best for you guys. And then confirm IRB approval. As Nicole mentioned, we do have an approved external IRB, but we're also happy to go through any internal IRB processes that exist on your campus. I would be the point person for that, happy to complete any forms, send any trainings, things like that. And then the next step is to determine that 3-week administration window from any time from now until the end of April, and then to submit the data file. So the way we actually administer the survey is that you all would submit student names and emails through our secure file sharing system. And then we send the survey out through our Qualtrics server, as well as any reminder emails. So we do try to make it as low lift as possible on your end.
Abby, one question. I think so. That's kind of default option. Option A is for Trellis to securely receive those student names and email addresses and take care of everything. In the event that an institution prefers to send the survey themselves, is that an option? And sort of what are the trade-offs?
Yes, that is an option. And in that case, we would obviously skip the submit student data file, step there. The trade-off is that it becomes a little bit more work on the institution end, because the invitation and any reminders go out from the institution rather than us. So if an IRB or institutional folks weren't comfortable with us sending it out, that is an option. But I will say our default option is to go through the student data file. But if that does not work for you guys, we can have schools we do have a link option for you guys to send out as well.
All right. So we can put this contact information in the chat as well. I'm going to go ahead and end the screen sharing just so we can turn to questions.
Yeah, perfect. So we have quite a few questions to get through. So let's see, let's get started. Okay, one of the first questions came in, and the person asked, apologies if you answered this already, but does the survey go to first year through fourth year students or just upperclassmen?
Yeah, great question. It depends on which level of institution. So for 4-year institutions, we're focused on seniors. The reason being that in prior times we cast a broader net, we found that, for instance, participation in work-based learning is really, really different across the different years. And it doesn't really make sense to aggregate for an institution. It makes more sense to measure it right before graduation and say, did you have this experience or not, to kind of have a better picture of that.
That means it's individuals who would be graduating in the calendar year 2025.
That's how we're delineating it for this year.
For the 4 years.
4-year institutions.
And you're about to say 2 years.
Right. For 2-year institutions, it's a little stickier. Is every student aiming to graduate? That's not even always the case. So we recognize that for those kinds of institutions, it's probably most worthwhile to just survey all of their students. And so that's the approach we're taking for 2-year institutions, is all enrolled students minus no high school dual enrolled students. We're excluding those, but anyone else would be invited to participate.
It's a great question. And Susanna Luzuriaga-Voigt had the question about undergraduate or graduate level. The survey is focused on undergraduates. It's in terms of the benchmarking and everything else. If you had a particular interest, what strategically is important for you to look at your graduate students, reach out and talk to us, and let's figure out if that makes sense. But the default and the assumption and the publication will be about undergraduate students. And yes, I don't know if we mentioned today verbally, but each student who completes the survey will receive a paid incentive or a paid, recognition for that completion, regardless of how many people participate. So we want to make that a universal incentive for everyone.
Yeah, so no lottery. It's a guaranteed incentive for all respondents. And students elect if they want to receive that. There's a few different PayPal, Venmo, some different options there. So. And then Suzanne had another question about, can it be a sample or does it have to be the full population? It does not have to be the full population. I think if it were a sample that was not representative of the population, then that would be something that we would want to understand. Like if you're only surveying your engineering students or something like that, then we would probably need to understand that and maybe wouldn't be able to give benchmarking as easily, for something like that. But, we're willing to work with you. We understand that, institutions can have concerns like that. And so definitely happy to talk more.
Yeah.
And I did want to jump in real quick. It looks like someone has a question about incentives if it goes to the student through the kind of master link that the institutions would send out, or if it was like through an email campaign administered by Trellis. We collect that information in the survey. So regardless of the dissemination strategy, if you send it out by yourselves or if you send it out through our secure Qualtrics platform, the students have the same opportunity at the end of the survey to indicate their preference, like Nicole mentioned, Venmo, PayPal, Amazon gift card, or kind of a link to a website with a host of gift cards. And then that payment is distributed electronically within 72 to I think 96 business hours after survey completion. That gives us some time to get through the responses, make sure everything's set up correctly, and then get that incentive out to the student. And for institutions, there are states that have some specific laws around this, but for most participating institutions, we are also offering a random drawing for $2,500 in gift cards in addition to the guaranteed $5 minimum incentive. So just want to jump in real quick for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Nicole, did you have something? I see.
Oh, I was just I see starting, I think we got up through Gina or, through Andrea, and then was going to go to the next question. But
Andrea, by the way, thank you for the University of Montana. They've been great partners in our survey work over the years. So good to see you with us, Andrea, today. I think a big question a number of you are having are state systems versus institutions. We've done outreach with the State Higher Education Executive Officers Association to state systems and system leaders, offering this opportunity to them. There are some systems that have the ability to send out a survey from the system level. Other systems who are encouraging their institutions to participate, and they're working out the data sharing and disclosure within their system. Like if I'm in Indiana today at our offices, if Indiana University and Purdue and like Southern Indiana all participated, they would still have control over their own data, right? It wouldn't be that the system has it to then, but the system could bring together those leaders in a cohort and say, let's think about what we learned together and what we want to do, and then voluntary sharing of what's helpful, but not sort of a big brother looking over your shoulder enforcement approach. Other systems have strategic initiatives around work-based learning in particular, and some in the education guidance, and states have priorities. So they'd like to get some information that will help them advance those efforts. So system, institution, they're both our pathways in. And then the data disclosure between institution system is custom to your own agreements with the institutions having agency in that.
And I see a question here about information being shared with non-Strada or Trellis entities. And it says even de-identified student information. And the answer to that is no, is that we will always, we will have these national and state level reports, but student information, especially your institutional report and your student level report, belongs to the institution. We're not sharing that outside of the organizations. And as Nicole mentioned, you even have the opportunity to be anonymous as well. So we really don't want it to feel like a gotcha. We want this to feel like you're getting this information, but that we're not sharing it externally.
All right. There are a lot of questions. I see we've been answering both the chat and Q&A. I think some of them are pretty straightforward. So to Gina's question, can we recruit participants in other ways besides email, like student portals, et cetera? Allison and Abby, I'm assuming that means yes, in terms of, either giving them a heads up, or if you choose to share a survey link, that you could do that in other formats. So yes. Serene, your institution does not need to pay to participate. This is free. Strada is a foundation, and this is something that we're sponsoring just to support your efforts and support understanding in the field. So no cost to you. The level of incentive the same for all students who participate. The guaranteed incentive is the same. It is $5. As Allison said, there's also an opportunity to, be entered into a drawing to win a larger amount. And you all provide, I believe, Allison, or Abby, do you want to speak to what you provide to an institution in terms of messaging and communication support?
Yes. So in the survey materials, we provide the language that goes out as a heads up from you all, and then also the language that comes out from us for the survey invitation and survey reminders. And then we can work together if you're interested in additional communication. We can work together on that. I also see a question here about a data sharing agreement. There is a question about that on the letter of intent. And I will say that is totally optional on our end. That is, if your institution requires a data sharing agreement, we are more than happy to have one. We do have a sample template one that we can use, and we're happy to send. If you'll reach out to the contact information that Nicole shared at the bottom, the surveys at Trellis Strategies, we can send that as well. And we can use the one that we have, but we're also more than happy to use an institutional data sharing agreement as well. The purpose of that DSA is really to make sure that your institution is comfortable with us administering the survey.
And I think maybe my post only went to host and panelists. It looks like that's all I'm able to do. But Abby, do you mind repeating that it's surveys@trellisstrategies.org? I guess I'll just repeat it. Right. So I'll
put it in the chat.
Okay, great. Yes. Thank you, Allison. Perfect. And a number of people have asked about if they can see the survey instrument. Yes. So reach out, and happy to share that with you.
We can also do an automatic outreach to everyone that attended the webinar and include the survey instrument. We also have kind of some survey materials that you can see the informed consent form that your students would see. You can get a link to our data management and policies website. Really just anything, and answers a lot of questions. And then any questions you have beyond that, Abby is always happy to jump on a call, or we can loop in the Strada team as well as it makes sense. And we can kind of go through any more logistical or specific questions that are maybe specific to your institution on a one-on-one kind of meeting. Yep.
Hopefully we're making progress here, and there's all good questions. So if you don't feel like you're getting the detailed level response you need with the group time today, we work asynchronously too. So do reach out, and you have a lot on your plates, and we want to make it as easy and be as timely as possible to get you that information. So forgive us if we're missing anything today. We will provide back. So let's talk about the data files that institutions get back. There are a handful of questions on that. You get a standardized templated report out, an automated report that will have your findings that will be comparable to the national report and to each state's report. But in addition to that, let's make sure we're clear on the data files that go back to institutions.
And Allison, forgive me, because I was trying to recall in the consent that the students give at the beginning of the survey. Do they provide consent to be identified to their institution? So for instance, when the institutions receive the file back, would it have the information in terms of which student gave that response, or is that an extra question in the survey? Or how would that work if an institution wants to be able to link their survey responses back to data that they have about students?
Right. So the default informed consent does ensure students that their responses will be de-identified before shared back with their institution. We do have sometimes institutions need to keep track of which students have received financial incentives. We can definitely provide back a list of students who completed the survey, not tied to their responses. But I do think we would have to handle sending back identified responses on a case-by-case basis, because that wouldn't be covered in our umbrella IRB that we did through Brainy, who, like Nicole and Dave mentioned, that's the organization that does the city human subjects training. So they're a really great standalone institutional review board, but we would need to kind of treat that on a case-by-case basis and see if that's something that we can customize with your institution.
Thank you. Really helpful. Again, if that's valuable and helpful to any of you individually, please reach out and let's make sure we understand those needs and work with you as we're able to on that.
Actually, I had with one question, one thought to add on that, Allison. Institutions are able to append data to what they provide to you, right? So they can provide student names and email addresses, but if they wanted to provide in that same data file, say whether or not a student was a participant in a particular program, they could provide that information at the time that they upload, that student contact information. And then would you be able to, when you provide the data back, I guess maybe again, that's a case by case basis, but if there were certain characteristics, I don't know, that could be something to think about.
So if nothing else, you can see we're active problem solvers.
Yes.
We'll do it right on the spot with you,
Yeah,
but
sorry.
we'd like to help you get what you need exactly. Don't apologize, Nicole. This is we're thinking together, and part of this for Nicole and I and Abby and Allison is for you to get to know us as a team and understand that these are relationships for us and a purpose and a philanthropic and altruistic intent to benefit students, to protect you, but to also provide the insights and the evidence that can inform progress, improvement, and even validate the efforts you've already been making. Along those lines, there was a question about could you participate in the future? And this is anticipated to be an annual survey by Strada. And so there will be, and if that cadence spreads out to every other year somewhere in the future, but there will be a consistent opportunity to participate and survey your students so you can see progress. So we hope states are motivated to make progress on these things and want them to see that. We'll also be highlighting states and systems and policies and practices that are tied to improvements, and convening and sharing and featuring this in our research and across the field with others. Also, we have other philanthropies that are interested in co-funding this survey and participating, so that this is a field building effort, not just Strada alone, that we want as many people as possible committed to and contributing to supporting you and your students in these endeavors. So sorry, just a little editorial. Maybe back to any of the questions. Allison, are you steering us through this? What have we not touched on?
Yeah, so there's a few questions that we haven't touched on, but I think we're making it through. The chat is a little congested, so if there is a question that you've asked in the chat and has not been answered, if you just pop that into the Q&A, just copy and paste, that would be helpful. But I think I've seen a few questions about demographics. So we have standard demographics on race, ethnicity, gender, field of study, and if they have a second major or minor. We also ask for students if they are dual enrolled, and we want to make sure that everyone receiving the survey is over the age of 18. These demographics, particularly for race, ethnicity, and gender, are written in a way that conforms with how IPEDS does reporting. So we, to be able to do the institutional weighting and benchmarking with your peers, we do need these questions as is in the survey, but we can also add supplemental demographics. If you want to ask race and ethnicity a certain way, we can always append that on at the end of the survey. We can also look at extra questions institutions might want to check in on a case-by-case basis and see if it makes sense to include those just for your students as well. And then, let's see. We have a question about getting institutional reports. We do provide institutional reports, including a custom report that benchmarks you to your peers in the state and across the nation. We also will provide a de-identified data file. And in addition to that, we'll also have a one-page infographic that has key findings from the survey in a nice one-page format that you can kind of share with your leadership and administration. And we can also do additional kind of case-by-case ad hoc requests to do further analysis. Like Nicole mentioned, if they had a program or something that was relevant to the survey, we could also do analysis by those students just for your institution.
Allison, there was a question about, can a student fill out the survey multiple times to get multiple incentives? So I was wondering if you wanted to speak to the identity verification and deduplication that prevents that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, through the two channels that we're sending the survey out, first we have the through our secure instance of Qualtrics. That is, each student will receive a link that is specific to that student. And once the link is completed, they cannot reopen the survey unless they contact us in case they maybe answered a question incorrectly, or they thought through some things and wanted to change a question, but they can't reopen it just to fill out the survey to get additional incentives. That would get flagged in Qualtrics. And then when we clean the responses for incentivization, that would be flagged as well. And then for institutions that are sending out that master link to all of their students, that is locked down where only you can only submit it once by the browser. And then when we manually kind of clean through and look at the institution specific responses, it would also be flagged. And so even if a student somehow completed the survey in Chrome and then in Edge, we would catch that day and then just remove the duplicate response. But we haven't seen that happen yet. And we did launch via a master link earlier this week and haven't seen any duplication come in yet. So that's a really good sign. But we have safeguards in place to avoid that.
Two questions I see, and maybe quickly. Andrea, your question, and I think others would be in the same setting of first destination survey. Many are doing the NESE kind of fourth-year student survey, this same kind of time window. We have found it helpful to response rates, and Allison and Abby can speak to this as well, for institutions to, in those communication materials, to articulate what's coming and why it's coming, so that you help your students identify it, as well as our own subject lines and requests need to make that clear and specific. So trying to be considerate of your students and help them also appreciate why and what benefit to the institution and to them in participating. So we're aware of all those things. And if you have specific kind of challenges, let's work with you on that. And then I just wanted to make sure Christina Bulna asked a question about, I want to make sure we are clear, you will get an institutional report and you will get a data file back. So just to be sure.
Well, we've mentioned several times, but just to reiterate, we are going to be sending out this recording to everyone who registered for the webinar. So that will be available for you on demand. And then we will also have, in that same email, we will provide the survey instrument, survey materials. You can take a look at what your students will receive, the language they would receive, what their informed consent looks like. And then if anyone has questions or wants to follow up with us, that will be available as well in that same email, that outreach with the webinar recording and the survey materials. But I don't see any other questions coming in. Is there anything else, Dave, Nicole, Abby, that we want to share before we wrap up a few minutes early today?
Nicole, anything you'd say?
Just thank you to everyone who's here, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you have another question or something you'd like to discuss with us. We're really happy to do that. So
I would just say that think of this as a start. We piloted and had an inaugural last year. We're engaging with you for the first time this year. We expect to learn and improve and grow and develop things that will be most useful to you in both process and in content over time. So we appreciate the partnership, not just in fielding a survey, but actually in building a movement across our field to help best serve our students and fulfill their aspirations and help you. So thank you.
All righty. Well, that will conclude our webinar for today. If you have any questions, please feel free to follow up with us. We're so excited about this opportunity. And I think we are ready to end for today. So thank you all so much.